Uncut and After Show. I'm your host Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon and join button if you'd like to become a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member and keep up to date with the Flat Earth debate. If you would like to support the channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they premiere, and there's also a PayPal, Patreon and crypto link together with a thanks button in the info box below the video. Speaking of Patrons, I'm going to do a quick shout out to all of you who do support me on Patreon. So a massive shout out of thanks and appreciation to Flat Earth Sage, Goldie McKiernan, Phoenix Rising 86, Retro Bill, More Books, Cannabear, Fibre Oats, Michael Kahn, Rob H, John Kays, Patrick Gunnels, Banter, Will Brax, Troy Shuker, Hairy Blade, Mobile Max 777, Rob W, Open Minded, Reese Pound, Del West Watson, Maria Neelands, Unbelievable Productions, Blue Ridge Ranger, The Real Gabster, Liam Nedrick Jr., Abraham Mohammed, Adrian Quintana, Skeptic936, Life is Short, Texas Mike, and David Wayne Foster. So another massive thank you to all of you for supporting me on Patreon. Now I will hand over to whoever is in Discord and Google so you can enjoy their dulcet tones while I set up for today's live show.
I mean, the nonsense they're coming out with is untrue.
That's the thing, though. That's the whole point behind the beliefs. None of these people have done field work to prove that these phenomenon that they say or believe exist. There's no field work done. Hello, Nathan.
I mean, Coriolis is easy to demonstrate in a merry-go-round. You need to have a spinning platform with you on it, and the ball. You don't need much more than that. It's just that when it comes to Earth, we don't observe these things. The Earth is not spinning.
Ain't that the truth?
Imagine you're doing a dive from a high platform, and you need to account for Coriolis. I mean, imagine if the swimming pool moves.
Dude, if Johnny
that
Weissmuller would have ever accounted for Coriolis, dude, he'd have never won all those gold medals. He'd have swung into the side of a cliff in Tarzan. Like, there's a lot of stuff that would have happened. Johnny Weissmuller was the original Tarzan. He was also an Olympic swimmer.
I'm not sure that, like with pendulums, unless they've got that claimed mechanism, like the special gimbal or whatever they call it, that allows them to claim that it's separate from the inertial reference frame. Separate from the non-inertial spinning reference frame when it's swinging back and forth. So because they're on the pivoting thing, I don't know what the name of it is, they say that means that you can see the Earth rotating underneath as the non-inertial reference frame, right? As you're standing on it, you see it seem to drift. But in reality, the pendulum's just going back and forth, and because it's on that special gimbal, it is exposing that drift. Now, I'm not saying that, because we covered this the other day, that anything that was swinging wouldn't be affected if Earth was turning. It would, but just not to the degree that people necessarily think it would. So, in your Tarzan example, I don't think that wouldn't be their claim. It wouldn't be Coriolis drift, but a consequence of what they claim is the cause of their claim of Coriolis effect, i.e., Earth turning underneath as you swing. I don't know how much effect that would actually have on him when he was swinging. Not a lot.
Right. But swinging north or south, according to their claims of Earth rotation, which I'm still waiting for someone to show me their evidence of them seeing that phenomenon. It
Yeah,
it
that bit I
may
definitely agree
or
with.
may
There's no,
not, depending on your location, come at you faster.
if they don't. I mean, that bit I'm definitely all for at the moment because it's one of the few things unlike gravity. So 107 years ago, if we were alive then, we'd be going, they claim that they can show this effect of mass attracting mass. That's something you can show me demonstrably happening in nature, and you can't. Roll on pseudo 4 space and move it into the conceptual, etc., etc. Problem solved for gravity. Well, we have the same exact thing for Coriolis, don't we? For the claim of Earth turn. A claimed physical effect that you should be able to see and experience. The effect induced by you turning beneath things. Well, that would mean that you're turning beneath things. Well, that means that things that are in the air behind you, you'd eventually reach on the rotating platform and you could smack into them. There's a consequence to that we don't see. And there's not a lot of else, unless you can name a few, that are claimed to be phenomena that are globe-proving phenomena that we simply don't experience.
Yeah, that's true, and it's happening. Everything about the globe model is slowly fizzling out. The truth is being unfolded, and having to change it dramatically because everyone's realizing the total lies that are involved.
Yeah, and when the lies get exposed, out come the doublespeak, contradictory, anti-flat earthers thinking they're defending the lie, but at the same time, I'm struggling to phrase this because of what they do. In their mind, they're defending the heliocentric religion by defying it and arguing against us. I just don't see how that can relieve any cognitive dissonance or leave them sleeping better at night, because they're literally going against their own claim in order to argue against us debunking the claim that doesn't occur in the natural phenomena claimed by the globe. Well, if you're not aligning with the globe, and you're not showing the phenomena the globe claims, just explaining why it doesn't occur, for example, how is that helping your faith in a globe Earth? I don't get how it helps them.
Good morning.
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 It helps them because they want to avoid reality and they're cognitively troubled, but they're also going a bit bat stir crazy. So to try to figure out the insanity involved in violating the law of non-contradiction when they read things in order to keep their globe model alive, you have a level of insanity at the same time arguing against the very thing they need to argue for. And every time they come in, and we see it all the time, I got this, oh, you want a citation? I'll bring you a citation. And every citation they bring in, they can't even read or assess properly. And when we read it, it proves our point. So they go to these so-called citations, think it's proving their point, but it's not, because they have a bias and it's driving them crazy. So they're going to have a bit of insanity, fighting and arguing against the very thing they have to defend. And that's what it is.
Yep.
I did have a good idea. I don't know if you would like to do this on the show, though, Nathan, but all the fallacies that we have for debate, right? Go through each one, give a debate topic for it from like the globe flat Earth, and then something off of globe flat Earth where that fallacy would apply. Still, so 2 examples per each fallacy, and then just go down the list of each one, and help the people out in the public to better understand it, because it's not just in debate where all of these are used. These are used every day by billions of people in conversations. We
I
were
agree.
talking about something off the globe versus flat topic yesterday, and it's funny because they were using the same fallacies, doing the same thing the globers were doing, just in the conversation, and it's just so weird because once you know the fallacy, you know what they're doing. You know when they're lying, you know when they don't know what they're talking about, when they're just blowing smoke.
Yeah, for me, the most prevalent example of that is affirming the consequent. If P, then
Right.
Q,
So-called
Q therefore P.
pendulum.
We will, though. We'll cover that on the live show for sure. Remind me and just say, can we cover the fallacies? And I'll start with affirming the consequent, and that'll tend to roll on to other people wanting to talk about various fallacies. If nothing else, it'll roll into the begging the question fallacy, because the if P statement in most assumed proof Cs are going to be a begging the question fallacy, at least with Sphere Earth. But yeah, definitely.
Well, I mean, it sounds like a good show topic, right? You just have a whole show where it's nothing but that. You give the fallacy, you give the examples, and then you move to the. I mean, that's what I'm saying. Like, the people that are listening to the show do need this, and it doesn't work just in debate. It works everywhere because every conversation turns quickly with one fallacy.
No problem. We'll forgo housekeeping as well. We'll just pick a housekeeping question and maybe focus on that with a specific fallacy example. And then if we exhaust that, we'll move on to either a different housekeeping question and the same fallacy in the formulation with a different housekeeping question, or a different fallacy. So, yeah, lots of variety.
This has been suggested many times. It just has never really had a whole show dedicated to it. I think at the times you attempted to do it, but we only got through one or two, and then some other topic came up. So yeah, I think it's a good idea.
That's always going to be the way as well. That's fine. It's good that we're overrun with things that we can cover, and we end up going off the beaten track a little bit. But better that than we're struggling to talk about things.
Well, we're struggling to have just basic conversations sometimes. I mean, anybody else, even from our side, rumpusing a basic conversation where the context is clear, and they jump in with a fallacy. Like, it really is annoying.
Yeah, you don't have to tell me that. I agree.
But I mean, that's the fun of the show, right? We get to see these things, but applying something that we've learned to every different area in our life. While we're at the grocery store talking to the clerk, while we're at the hardware store talking to them about what size pipe we actually need, what fitting that goes with it. When we're talking to pilots about where we're going and what the drift is and what the wind current that's up there has to do with the drift traveling. I mean, there's so many things that we can apply all of this to. It's so basic. But we didn't get that here in the States until high school, debate class. But they still skim over things. So you don't get a full rundown. It's horrible.
Well, you're never going to in a normal high school because they haven't given you good grounds in logic to begin with to move on to debate. Have they?
Well, it's weird, right? The teacher that teaches the debate class had to go to college to learn about all the fallacies, had thousands of examples given for each type of fallacy so she better understands. So she moderates the debates in the class, but then fails to teach us how to do the same. It's so
Right.
weird.
That's my point. So before you get to the logical fallacy aspect of debate, you first have to have a good understanding of logic. Well, that's not something that they want to teach your average Joe normie in a normie school. Far from it. They want to teach you good logic, because then you might start questioning stuff. They want to train you how to be a good worker bee, how to sit at the desk for a good period of time, how to control your bladder, things like that. Not exercises in logic. You might scratch the surface in some aspects of the maths class, but that's about it. Yeah,
Yeah, I personally haven't really been involved with anything like that at school, and I'm only just picking up on these sort of things on the show, which is all new to me, but very interesting. So yeah, it's good.
Well, for
It
a
was
while
funny
I
last
was.
week though. I mean, my partner, she's not much into this. My partner's not as much into this topic as I am, but some family sort of thing going on, and I just come out with, "Well, you're assuming the consequence," and she'd never heard me say this before, and she just looks at me as if to say, "Where the hell have you got that from?" But I've
Affirming.
sort of started using it naturally a little bit.
Might as well start there. So not assuming, affirming.
Oh yeah, sorry. See what I mean?
That's all right.
I'm learning.
No, I got lucky. My dad was a programmer, so he was designing systems for people to use out in the NHS, the hospitals here. He developed a database for that, and I don't know, companies that were doing databases for their various boring industrial things. Anyway, that was all based in logic. So as I watched him work, he would explain various aspects of logic to me. Now, he would just explain it as though it was programming logic, but logic is logic. It doesn't matter if it's a programming code. It's more strict, garbage in, garbage out, and all that stuff. With a programming code, it's going to fail if it doesn't line up correctly. Whereas humans rather than computers, can easily formulate bad logic and verbalize it, and it can, in their mind, still be good logic, right? Whereas a computer just wouldn't follow the process; it just wouldn't do it. So with those sort of hard and strict rules about what is and isn't good logic, I had a nice grounding, and then learnt about it a little bit more when I went for a period to a private school. So I had a different education from most people in that regard. So when it came to logical fallacies, it's not second nature, but it did click pretty quickly.
You have to include some other factors in debate. If a person's defensive to begin with, attitude-wise, even if you point these things out, it's not going to progress any forward because they're just going to put their feet to the ground and say, I'm not moving from here. And they sound crazy because they just committed a fallacy and their statement isn't logical anymore. They're contradicting themselves and they don't even realize it because pride and the lack of humility to say, you know what, I think I just lost that point. You make good sense there. I appreciate you helping me out in life. Instead of having that attitude when people who want to engage and discuss issues, they have this defensive one. So it's really hard unless they're really open to it. So that's why they have eyes to see and ears to hear. It's possible, but if they don't, here they come.
Right. When people reach a brick wall in their understanding, they'll appeal to us here to tell them answers or critique information that they've based their faulty logic on. And half the time, they've spent the last preceding 20 minutes interrupting every word that you've said. And then once you finally got them to not interrupt you and listen to the fact that they don't understand what they're actually talking about and why, with an explanation attached to it, the humility that they have for not understanding what they've barked at you forever, that they've told you or understood when they haven't, that gets forgotten about immediately. And the humility that is, oh, no, I didn't really understand, did I? Now that you've actually been able to explain it without me interrupting you from the point of view of the opponent. It's at that point you're just thinking, why am I going to even carry on talking to you? You're an unpleasant person. Most people will watch that unfold and then just hear the end result, where I could just kick them out and not get annoyed with them, but instead it continues and they'll get more and more, or I'll get more and more irate with them as they disseminate that behaviour more and more and more. In other words, they have the ounce of humility for a few seconds because they recognise that their interruptions weren't valid and they didn't know what they were talking about. It's been explained to them, they've understood. Then they want to move on, critiquing something new or presenting something new without any acknowledgement of what they've done further to that, just further interruptions for the new point that they now want to argue about, that you'll have to spend 20 minutes with them interrupting you, not acknowledging their error, etc., etc. Like, yeah, intolerable people. But as I say, the focus will be on me shouting at them at the end of that process for being an intolerable person.
Well, it does happen in everyday life in all subject matters as well. So it's not like it's a new thing.
No, but the distinct lack of humility that we have to deal with does get on my nerves, because people don't expect to have to afford us any humility whatsoever when they get here. It's not even contemplated. So when it arises, they're like dumbfounded, want to quickly move past it. Like, no. The fact that you didn't think you had to express any humility when you got here, and the fact that you thought that everything you had to say was absolutely double-checked, confirmed and correct because you Google searched it before you got here, when that turns out to be true, I don't expect to be barked through. I just expect an ounce of humility, and there may be a little bit more of a conciliatory nature to your behaviour thereafter. Not that I'm going to get that. Those expectations are way too high.
I'm going to post 2 slides in Master Beef for us to contemplate.
Okie dokie. Yeah, ready when you are.
So as you can see here, we have the dingleberry Earth that doesn't exist, but they always put it there in the orthographic view. You never see this in perspective view at sea level. You never see what you see what this image is showing you side on, because this image is not real because we don't live on the globe. But they have to do this. This is a very effective trick, by the way. But let's look at what the point is here. So you got the observer O, and you've got the sensible horizon that is I line, H. Then you've got observer height above, and that's the O apostrophe and the H apostrophe, another horizontal. So in the Sexton dip correction, which is so convoluted because they have to use this dingleberry to obfuscate the point somehow, all you're doing is correcting an angle of depression that O would have with the horizontal below the sensible horizon, the eye level horizon. If you go to the next slide, you can see here, assuming this person is on top of a boat instead of that box, and the sensible horizon would be the eye line, which is like what a bubble section does. The angle depression would be the dip correction, and the basketball would be right there at sea level. So it's a subtraction in all the dip correction articles. It's the height of I above sea level. So if you bring that dotted line that's going to the basketball at sea level, and we'll call that the horizon, if you subtract that from how high your eyes are from sea level, you have that same horizontal corresponding with the one with your eye that the bubble section would give you. So it has to be a parallel horizon, horizontal. And so there's your 90. You got to be able to subtract from 90. And this is so obvious that all you're doing is correcting for that angle of depression from the eye being above sea level to make it horizontal, which a bubble would give you a tri line. Isn't this pretty clear?
Ace, thank you.
It's just that simple. But then now here come the fallacies and arguments. Oh, no, that's not what we're doing. But see, you don't see a curved dingleberry here. You just see sea level.
Right on. Yeah, you need the parallel. And even in the globe description, you've still got the parallel. What you described initially, O apostrophe to H apostrophe along the ground level. Yeah, so why have you got this if what you're actually dealing with is this line from O to D with a T that's bent in their claims recently since 2020? It's like, yeah, it's a complete cluster screw on a globe. It simply doesn't work. It's not how it functions.
Yeah, well, if they want to come on and show us a citation saying it's other, I'd like to see it because I got hundreds of them saying it's what I just described.
Yeah, they always seem to backfire whenever they do provide citations. Oh, here on page 87, it says in small font, italicized, that you can go through a very lengthy process of making this work on a globe. Therefore, it works on a globe. You're all idiots. What about the 80 pages preceding it that talked about how it works on a flat plane and elevation angle measurements off a flat plane and minusing from 90 off a flat plane to get it to the GP of the star that you're measuring and triangulating with? What about all that working on a flat plane? Because there's a disclaimer on page 82, you're going to say that means it works on a globe, because it could be back calculated. It's very complicated and long-winded and isn't what's done, but it could be done.
Well, here I'm reading one. When the dip of the horizon, when the observation for altitude is made to a celestial body at sea, a correction for the dip of the horizon must be made, as the visible horizon does not correspond with the astronomical horizon, which is 90 degrees from the zenith. And we know that the amount of the dip depends on the height of the observer's eye above sea level. And then what do? They throw in this little thing that doesn't matter, and the size of the Earth.
That's the same thing that's done with the definition of refraction, right? The main definition is when light bends, passing from one medium to another, gas, liquid, solid. The outlier of that is talking about an optical illusion. But even then, it appears as though it's bending. That's what they stick with all the time. They skip the main definition and the necessary antecedent for actual bending line.
Well, the horizon is where the air meets the sea, the atmo meets the sea, appears to meet the sea. The refraction with the spoon in the glass with water is the spoon bends only when it's in the water, the different medium. The atmosphere is not the sea. The atmosphere has density levels the lower you get because of stuff in the air. And that's what's causing the refraction. It's not the same as putting a spoon in a see-through glass and seeing refraction when it enters another medium like water from air. It is almost like a in-between refraction with other mediums that are floating in the air that's causing a slight refraction, which is normal. And the dip correction already has the refraction numbers in it. So when you do dip, it's already taken into account refraction. So it's not the same thing that they're trying to say, because it's not entering the ocean. It's meeting at the surface, and then whatever that lower 10, 15, sometimes 20%, they say because of air temperature of the and the water temperature, you might have normal refraction properties, taking place. So here's the table for that. It's not trying to correct the spoon bending in the water. It's not in the water.
There is no spoon.
There is no spoon. But it's already in the dip. It's already in the dip correction.
It's actually you that's bending.
On the topic of angles, I'd like to put a call out to Anti-Flat Earth HQ, specifically as it relates to determining the distance to the ISS using what they call parallax angles. So using two observers observing a single object in the sky to determine its distance, thus verifying the ISS, its orbit, and its real distance from the Earth. That was a hot topic yesterday for a couple of the anti-flat earthers. Love for them to come on the show and explain.
Oh yeah, and did you take them to the, in my mind, obvious conclusory point about that angle measurement differential to get the height?
Well, George spanked them pretty good actually with flat Earth, but of course in denial about that flat plane. But I'd love for them to explain in detail.
Hold on. That came across very. That wasn't confident at all.
No, so, I'm a dummy, Nathan. I'm a dummy here. I'm very much
you're not a dummy.
Generalist.
You've just said it. You just didn't say it with confidence. So you said George spanked them pretty good with the fact that they need a flat Earth, or words to that effect, right? In other words, to measure that angle that they're going to deduce the height with, the angle itself is an elevation angle measurement, isn't it?
Yeah, like two independent ones, I suppose.
So that would be,
as I understood.
So that would be two angle measurements off a flat plane, then.
Yeah, well, you need the distance between those two people, is what I think they were trying to determine. You still need a flat plane and a 90-degree angle to ultimately come up with it, as I understand. But
Boom! Yeah. Right. Now that was said with confidence.
Well, there's things that I kind of know, but I'm not able to, like I say, come off on the fly. But yeah, I'd love for them to come and explain it in depth, specifically two of them.
Hold on a second. Sorry, George, I know it was you that was in there. I assume he means you. You mean Jorge, right?
That's right.
Right. Okay, I'll come back to you, Jorge, I promise. What I mean is, you're asking that question. I'd love for them to come in and explain it, because I suspect by your tone that you weren't 100% confident in the argument, just by the way you disseminated it and immediately passed over the credit to George. But with a little bit of a
I go straight
nudge.
to name calling.
Go on, say again.
I apologize. I said I generally go straight to name calling. I get a little too flustered.
No, that's fine.
I need better debate skills.
Yeah, but what I'm suggesting is, you wouldn't necessarily need to do that. You might, depending on the person you're dealing with. But that aside, just that 1 ounce more confidence in terms of, no, you will need a flat plane to measure these angles. That's what an angle is, 2 straight lines. Now, you did know that, and I knew you knew that. But like a lot of other people watching, I'm really glad we've had this conversation. Might even end up going over the live start time just to make this point. It's the confidence. Because it seems like a big step, right? To say, you're making a claim about measuring the height of the ISS, and you're taking 2 angles to it, right? Is it too bold at this stage to say, you've just proven a flat Earth twice? It's not. It definitely isn't. And you know that somewhere deep down inside. I know you know.
Yeah. Cheers.
Nathan,
yeah, just tell them, baby.
before you go...
Hold on 1 second.
Before you go to George.
Hold on 1 second, 10th. We're going to get to Jorge afterwards. But yeah, I just want the guy to respond, then we'll go to Jorge, who can have his glory moment.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I still building that confidence, and we'll have it eventually. But it was a contentious topic yesterday,
which makes it harder to you second guess yourself. That's normal, and I just wanted to, because I picked up on it straight away. And by the way you phrased it, it's called fading facts. The behavioural panel covered this. It's when you say something and you are saying the right words, but you're sort of saying them a bit quieter as you say them at the end. Fading facts.
Yeah, no, guilty as charged, man. I'd fully admit that.
Yeah,
anyway, Jorge. No, Jorge, go ahead.
Hi. Yeah, it was simple. I just agreed with them. It was easy to agree with them. They understand that they require a flat plane. It wasn't saying it in the end. It was a silence in the room, because they have 2 observers, and they know the distance between them. So that is the flat plane between the 2 observers required for this to be measured, these elevation angles. So yeah, it was easy.
Go ahead, 10th.
Yeah, I think it was yesterday's show. The point is not debatable. It's not a debate point, as John Refract Curvature has succinctly shared. I mean, take the win. You have the win. It doesn't matter about the ISS after that, whether it's on balloons or it's high in the sky with some kind of powered mechanism that makes it go around this flat plane. You take the win the minute they say angle. It's not even anything you can debate anymore. It's a fact. And so you can shut them down right there. Also, everything you're saying about your proofsy first needs a flat plane. That's what you just said by saying angle measurement.
Welcome to Flat Earth Debate Live. I'm your host, Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon, and join button if you'd like to become a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member and keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you would like to support the channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they are live, and there's also a PayPal, Patreon, crypto, and thanks button in the info box below the video. Most importantly, if you'd like to join the discussion, simply mute the page you are currently watching, then click the link in the info box below this video to join the panel and express your views on the nature of Earth. If you do join, please don't swear. If you do, you'll be ejected. And if you are, please don't try to rejoin the stream using sock accounts. You'll be warmly welcome back on the next stream. Please also share the show on social media. Sharing the show obviously increases the live audience, but this in turn increases the chances of a more diverse panel. So please share the show on Facebook and Twitter. Now we are joined by Refracted Curvature, 10th Man, Arwin, Neil, and a whole bunch of people in Discord. So welcome one and all.
Good morning. Good morning.
Hey!
Hey, good
good afternoon.
morning.
Good afternoon. It's good to have you all. Today we're going to do something a little bit different. So instead of focusing on housekeeping as we do typically at the beginning of the show, we're going to pick a housekeeping question between us. So I'm going to only give you a couple of choices to keep this fairly brief, this part of the show. And then we're going to cover that particular housekeeping question in terms of the fallacy use around that housekeeping question. This was a suggestion that came from our Discord server from the guy whose name changes quite frequently. Who was it that said this in Discord? Just so I can see your name flashing.
Cuddles.
Who was it?
Cuddles.
Cuddles.
Cuddles. Oh, is it Cuddles? Okay. You go by lots of different names, Cuddles. Fair enough. So Cuddles came up with this idea that we just cover a fallacy in a little bit more depth, mainly because they're used in daily life, not just in debate about the nature of Earth, although obviously we're a dab hand at talking about them in that context, so we may as well, so that hopefully the audience can take the information away and use it in their general day-to-day life when people are using these fallacies and they may not have appreciated it until we've gone through them. So we're either going to cover axial rotation or Earth curve. So is there any preference particularly which one we're going to cover? Any evidence of Earth curve or any evidence of axial rotation? That would be Earth spinning.
Let's do Earth curve.
Okay, so the fallacy we're going to cover is going to be the affirming the consequent, which is a formal logical fallacy, meaning it has form. And the form is if P, then Q, Q, therefore P. Now, we may expand on this at the end of the description to include the begging the question fallacy that typically is the P statement. However, we won't. We'll just cover the fallacy itself, which is if P, then Q, Q, therefore P. Now, the if P statement is the thing that you're trying to prove, and you're going to be affirming this by showing something not necessarily related to it occurring, and then saying that that occurrence is as a result of the P statement being true. So in the case of a sphere Earth, if the Earth is a sphere, then we will see Earth curve, is the P statement. Or, to make it more accurate, if the Earth is a sphere, we will see Earth curve at the horizon. So the Q statement is we see Earth curve at the horizon. So if Earth curve at the horizon. And then the Q statement again, well, we see Earth curve at the horizon. Therefore, Earth's a sphere. So if P, Earth a sphere, then Earth curve at the horizon is Q. Q, Earth curve at the horizon. Therefore, Earth's a sphere. So obviously we're going to, as I said before, whistle past the fact that assuming Earth's a sphere in the first instance is a begging the question fallacy, and just focus on the fact that they're claiming the proof of a sphere Earth is had by looking at the horizon. And then when you look at the horizon, you know Earth's a sphere. So it's an affirming the consequent fallacy. Anybody want to add anything to this before we maybe expand on it a little bit more? No? So the logic, the fallacy is that the one doesn't necessarily follow the other, which is to say that if Earth's a sphere, we'll have a physical geometric limitation to our view at 1.2 times the square root of the observer's height in feet. And what do you know? There's a physical geometric limitation to our view at 1.2 times the square root of the observer's height in feet. Therefore, Earth's a sphere. Well, the Q statement, i.e. physical limitation of an Earth curve, I'm assuming at 1.2 times the square root of the observer's height in feet, aka the curve maths, isn't indicative of a sphere Earth being the cause of that horizon. There's no other options explored. It's just affirming the consequent, affirming that your presumption of a sphere Earth being a cause for a horizon to block things in the distance is a reason to reassert that when you see it blocking things in the distance by assumption, it's caused by Earth being a sphere. Right, let's discuss this. Unless there's something I've missed in that. I don't think there is.
Yeah, I mean, you hear it all the time. They've already in their mind accepted that they're on the sphere, so they're already starting it without proving it first. I think it's the main point, right?
Well, I thought we'd move on to that at the end before we cover a bit more in discussion about affirming the consequent. But yes, we will get to that. Begging the question is the overall aspect that we're going to mainly focus on throughout all of these fallacy discussions.
So what we're saying is, if the Earth is if the Earth is curved, we will see examples of the horizon blocking things at a certain distance using the Earth curve calculator. Is that that's what we're saying? Is it?
Yeah, that's if P then Q. And in most discussions, the person formulating this fallacy won't necessarily formulate the conclusion. They'll leave that to you. I'm glad you've mentioned this. So what Wandek's just done is given half of the form. He said, if Earth's curving, then we'll see a blockage at the horizon based on the curve maths. End statement. Well, the conclusion that they want you to make for them is filling in the blanks of the rest of the fallacy, which is your opponent, i.e. me in this example, by example, me saying, so we do see a blockage at the horizon at the numbers in the curve maths, therefore Earth's a sphere. Oh, well, then I've lost the argument, therefore Earth's a sphere, right? Not recognising that the one doesn't necessarily follow the other. Earth being a sphere, and there being a limitation to your visual acuity at a certain distance, just to rephrase it, to hopefully jog-start some people's memories about what we're talking about here. Anyway, the one doesn't necessarily follow the other, so to just make it as a statement and then affirm the consequent and say, because of the statement, my pre-assumption in the P is true, is the fallacy itself. Any more for any more? If not, we'll go on to begging the question itself.
Well, when affirming consequent fails, oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
I was going to say when the affirming consequent fails, though, you do get a modus tollens out of it.
Yeah. Okay. Do you want to cover that? Not
yeah.
Q. Do you want to formulate the actual fallacy first, and then we'll cover that, because it is definitely related.
If it's if P then Q, Q therefore P is affirming the consequent. Modus tollens is if P then Q, not Q, therefore not P.
Correct. So in modus tollens, which this is precisely where this should have gone if I'd have given this a bit more thought. Thank you, John, for being here. Very important that we cover this. So in my example, and in Wandek's example, we'll use Wandek's example without the full form, and then we'll add the form after. So if Earth is curving, then we'll see an obstruction effect at the horizon, a la the curve maths claim of it. No need for the affirming the consequent bit, which is the curve maths, therefore Earth a sphere. But if you take that logic and say, if Earth's curving and we look at the curve maths, that's the same as saying, if Earth's a sphere radius 3959, then every distance to horizon can be no more than 1.2 times the square root of the observer's height in feet. That's if P, then Q. Just in a much less concise but much more detailed manner. But then when that fails, i.e. if the horizon isn't in line with that statement, you've got not Q. So if Earth is a sphere, then you'll have this horizon at 1.2 times the square root of the observer's height in feet, as claimed to be blocking boats and buildings in the curve maths. But it isn't blocking boats and buildings as per the distances set out for the physical geometry in the curve maths. Therefore, not P. not Earth the sphere, radius 3959. So the failure of a fallacy to come to fruition upon example will turn into a modus tollens, which is also a form of logic as opposed to logical fallacy. Anything else on this?
Well, I like to say from an explanatory way, it's obviously by using what John said and you just repeated, then what is causing the limitation? Well, it's our eyes, and they're using that to prove something else, but it doesn't prove something else. And so once the horizon is identified as Earth curve, and yet it's not where it's supposed to be, then what it was blocking? So it's going to go into, well, why is the thing?
No, it won't. And I'm
disappearing
glad you've said that. Very valid point in terms of a general discussion point. But as we're talking specifically about debate and fallacy, wrong. Not in what you said, that was correct, but the reasoning behind it was wrong, and I'll explain why. Once you have disproven somebody's basis of good logic, i.e. shown that it's fallacious, and formulated it as we have done with potentially an opponent's argument, so Earth a sphere, we'll see Earth curve at the horizon, we do see Earth curve at the horizon, therefore Earth a sphere. Once you take that apart and show its fallacious reasoning, it is not up to you to then explain what causes obstruction, in quotes, at the horizon, or show that it isn't obstruction, because that would be a positive claim you're trying to prove. It isn't something. You disprove their assertion based on its fallacious logic. Once you have shown that their logic is flawed, their argument is void. Now, upon voiding someone else's argument, it is not your responsibility to provide proof positive for their assertion, unless you are, in this instance, 10th has just done this, making a claim of your own. If you take it upon yourself to suddenly make an assertion about what the horizon is, regardless of if you know or not, then you're falling victim to them having reversed the burden of proof without even trying. Now, we may or may not get into reversing the burden of proof, but my point is that it's not up to you to provide anything after a claim fails. And if you're the one showing why and how it fails, it's still not up to you when they turn around and say, well, what does cause things to go over the... I don't care. It wasn't my claim. You claimed it was Earth curve, and it isn't. So beyond it not being Earth curve, based on the example you gave and the logic you gave, give me another example of it being Earth curve, as that's your claim. Now it's down to you to give a better example, one that isn't fallacious, one that is sound in logic and does prove we're on a sphere with a curve Earth for a horizon. Not for me to show how it's formed, because I'm not making any claims about that. Fascinating though it would be to discuss perspective.
Well, yes, but maybe I wasn't clear in what I was trying to do. Let's assume that they agree with you. Okay, so you've proven to me it's not Earth curve. Okay, so we're settled on that? Yeah, okay, it's not Earth curve. Do you know what is causing that obstruction? Any idea? Any guess? Because we just figured out it was an Earth curve, so that's out of the question.
So why? How will it benefit my life? Now I know it's not the prevalent Western worldview that the horizon is a physical obstruction, geometric in nature, blocking boats and buildings with a calculable value for how much they'll be blocked by it. Once we figure out that that is not the case, will it somehow benefit my life in any way, shape or form beyond the total revelation that the entire worldview I held for the majority of my life is a total lie? Beyond that, you think I should concern myself with what it actually is? I mean, that really doesn't concern me.
Well, in real life, it does, because in real life, the guy's saying, man, you just proved to me the Earth isn't curved. Man, thanks a lot. But now, what is that phenomenon that things disappear bottom up at sea? Have you done any research on that? Because it's obviously not Earth curve.
Obviously not Earth curve being the main point here, not the fascinating folly that may follow if you choose to pursue that vague special interest in horizons that aren't Earth curve.
Well, I wasn't going to go
there. Can I say something?
Let me finish, if I may. No, I was going to say it's obviously a limitation of your eyes and the deck and the compression of light. It's obviously optical.
Right, so now you're open to me challenging you to demonstrate and prove that for no perceivable benefit. There's no positive claim of a flat Earth attached to you saying that there's a limitation to your view at the horizon caused by aperture size or angular limitations, diffraction, refraction, whatever it is that you, in your experience and knowledge, which may be vast, claim at this point. All you've done is open yourself up for me to challenge you to prove that, when it's not attached to a claim of a flat Earth at this point.
That's what I was going to say. You're still arguing about Earth curves or the horizon at that point.
It all depends if I sense the person's already admitted that it's not Earth curve and we don't live on the ball. That depends highly on that before you go on to anything else.
Okay, but hopefully the point's been laboured enough. Let's move on, unless anybody else wants to talk about affirming the consequent, the formal logical fallacy. If P, then Q, Q therefore P. If not, we'll move on to begging the question. I suppose there's a choice. Would you prefer to move on to begging the question as a whole, or use if P, then Q, Q therefore P in a different housekeeping question, i.e. axial rotation with the same form of logical fallacy? So what do you want to do? Talk about begging the question, or talk about affirming the consequent with axial rotation?
I want to hear begging the question.
I'd say do the axial rotation to get one more run at P then Q, then go to begging the question and do, because everything is begging the question at the end of the day.
I'll go with that. That was the most expansive
Yeah,
we've
that's
got in
good.
the last 20 seconds. Okay, so the same example. So we're talking about affirming the consequent, the logical fallacy that is if P then Q, Q therefore P. In this example, we're going to have Earth turning as the example. So if Earth is turning is the P statement, and axial rotation at 15 degrees an hour drift in the stars will be the Q statement, just to keep it nice and simple. So if Earth is a sphere rotating, then I will observe a deviation known as Coriolis Effect in the stars at 15 degrees an hour. We do observe 15 degrees an hour of drift Coriolis Effect because we're on an inertial turning reference frame beneath them. Therefore, Earth's a turning sphere. So that's if P, then Q, Q, therefore P. If P, Earth's sphere, then Q, stars moving, Coriolis Effect. Coriolis Effect in the stars, therefore Earth's sphere turning. Okie dokie. Does it logically follow that the assumption of us turning beneath a motion we observe in the stars proves that the motion in the stars is an example of us turning beneath them? No.
Surely you'd have to have another example of that, wouldn't you? Do you not have to have a couple of examples of
Well, that
this?
is their example. That's the point of this. So the point is, my example, let's just, rather than put it in the third person, my example is that because we are on a turning platform that's sphere-shaped, we observe Coriolis deflection in the stars at 15 degrees an hour. That's Earth turning P, Coriolis deflection at 15 degrees in stars, Q. Do we observe 15 degrees an hour of deflection in the stars because we're on a turning reference frame? Yeah, we do. That's my example. It's fallacious because the one doesn't necessarily follow the other. So the Q statement is Coriolis effect. So the effect being described with the 15 degrees an hour deviation is only applicable if you're turning beneath things. So it only follows that you will observe that effect if your statement you're affirming, which is if Earth a turning reference frame, then we'll see an effect that's only applicable if we're turning. And we do see an effect that's only applicable if we're turning, therefore we're turning. Again, no other option explored. No other possible option other than Earth being a turning reference frame to cause that star movement to occur is a possibility in this form of logical fallacy. It's the only option, and when you see the second point being made, it proves the first. That's the way this form works. So to break it down beyond any example, you make a statement, true or otherwise, and then use something that you know you can demonstrate as proof of that statement. Then you show that you can show it happening and claim that that's proof of your original statement. So, for an example, if unicorns exist, then we will observe the stars moving because of them dancing through the skies at night. Do we see the stars moving in a circular fashion? Yeah, we definitely do, don't we? Yeah, you're all nodding. I can see you all nodding. Therefore, unicorns. dancing in the sky at night. My P statement, unicorns, dancing unicorns. My observable fact that I can show happening, and will show happening when I affirm the consequent, is stars moving. So I show you stars moving, and therefore unicorns, right?
Right, the unicorn is dragging a giant chariot behind it, and the stars are its wheel.
Exactly. And do we see the stars moving in a fashion because they're dragged by the chariot with unicorns on harnesses? Yes, we do. Therefore, unicorns are pulling the stars around in a circular fashion. Right, affirming the consequent. If P, then Q, Q therefore P. Now, unlike the Earth curve example, I can't say I can stop the stars to disprove the if P then Q statement. Farcical though it is to make unicorns my example, likewise Earth turning as a non-inertial turning reference frame is farcical. I can't then say, well, if unicorns, therefore star rotation. But look, check it out. This is an example of no star rotation, therefore definitely not unicorns. Whereas with Earth curve, you can do that. You can show where it doesn't actually line up with an obstruction they're claiming and the geometry that they're claiming. When they say that we'll see Earth curve at a particular fixed geometry in the maths at radius 3959. Stars won't be stopped, unlike horizons moving, which do with the weather. The stars will always do what they do. Horizons tend to move around quite a lot and have no fixed location. But they need to have a fixed location when they're claimed to be a hill in the way of stuff. Horizons, that is. So it's not transposable into the modus tollens example that was given by John very eloquently earlier. But it is still another example of if P then Q, Q therefore P, with if Earth sphere turning as a non-inertial reference frame, then star rotation, Coriolis effect at 15 degrees an hour, and Coriolis effect at 15 degrees an hour, check out that star rotation, therefore Earth a non-inertial turning reference frame.
Wow, and this is what the Western world have been told the reason why the Earth is a globe, and it seems like most of the people haven't even challenged this weak statement.
Except
Oh, by the
virus.
way, I have an expansion on the unicorn star wheel theory, right? The stars are not the wheel, they're actually the nails on the wheel that are reflecting light to us, right? So we're seeing like glimmers of nails, and they are on the wheel. They're holding the wheel of the heavens together, and the unicorn is pulling it.
And the light's the wheel, right?
Well, the stars are
You're
the
just begging the
nails
question,
on the
mate.
wheel.
Right.
They're reflecting light.
Right, that's what I mean. Okay. Therefore, do we see those nails of a wheel in the sky moving? Yeah, we definitely do, don't we, Arwin?
Indeed.
Therefore, chariots and unicorns. Obviously.
I mean, it's
Well,
not that far off Egyptian cosmology, so.
There would be a way to falsify that claim, right? I mean, the stars are supposedly turning because we're on a spinning platform.
Well, there's one way to prove it.
Simply,
you have to get up there and remove one of the nails.
Hold on, Chocolate's halfway there to a modus tollens. Go ahead, Chocolate.
yeah. Well, if the stars are moving because we're on a spinning platform, simply remove yourself from the platform, and stars should stop spinning. Does that happen?
No.
Good one, mate. Yeah.
Funny that.
Now let's just see. I think you've almost got this. So if we are rotating P, then we will see star rotation Q. Not Q. We don't stop the star rotation. That's not quite not Q, is it? But it's almost there. This just needs a tiny bit of spit and polish, Chocolate, and it's a modus tollens. I was wrong.
Yeah.
And
I know what you mean.
It's enough for me to...
mean.
Hold on, I'm just going to concede and give you credit. It's enough for me to say I was wrong. When I said this couldn't be formulated into it, I hadn't considered how you could rephrase the Q slightly to get it to match up with the statement being disproven by just simply leaving the claim to be rotating reference frame. Then it can be turned into a modus tollens. Kudos.
Come on, John. What is it?
Hold on. What if when you leave it, you're still rotating, even though you left the surface?
But that doesn't fall in line with if P then Q in the first instance, which is the claim that we're going to observe Coriolis because Earth's turning. So if you then say, well,
Well, no, you're sorry, but you're even though you're not on it, you're still rotating with it.
Well, are you okay? Did you have a bad breakfast? What's going on?
No. I'm trying to figure out how he's trying to get around to the formulation of if it got put into a modus tollens, how your typical anti-flat Earth response is that you're still turning, but you're still seeing the deviation, which means that you're still a part of the non-inertial turning reference frame. Now, in that example, and specifically when you've focused on getting it into a form of logic, i.e. modus tollens, you can't have any rough edges because it fails on its arse the moment somebody inserts a get out that hasn't got me in the modus tollens saying, yeah, but Neil deGrasse Tyson says we're turning underneath footballs, and snipers say we're turning under bullets, right? Once that's inserted into the debate, it all makes sense and their arguments overcome. But you don't need that. What you want is a self-contained logical consistency. Yeah, that doesn't have that possible. Well, the way that's done is by phrasing the Q statement in such a manner that it has the ability to remove yourself from the platform and still be the same statement when you show that not turning on the rotating claimed to be platform of Earth as a sphere at 15 degrees an hour doesn't induce the effect you would expect by leaving the platform, i.e. you don't stop the stars. So the not Q statement works, you don't stop the stars, but how do you have the Q statement work without that point that the guy's just made, undoing the modus tollens on its arse pretty quickly? Like I say, it needs some bit of polish, but it's pretty damn good, and it's enough for me to concede that there's definitely a modus tollens in there.
No, I mean,
well, logically, if you're getting off the platform or the non-inertial reference frame, the spinning Earth, and supposedly you're still spinning with it, then why make and that's still causing the stars to move, then why make the claim that they're moving because you're on the spinning platform?
Because you're still on it.
That
if you're
you're
still
just wasting
part of
time.
This is Earth and atmosphere moving together. Now, in this case of the stars, that's the only example that it works with. It's only because I've got local examples that I can take it away from them. So you can still have a Coriolis deflection with a mixture of Coriolis effect and first law of thermodynamics violations and Earth and atmosphere moving as one. Because Earth and atmosphere moving as one doesn't affect the fixed inertial reference frame that the stars are in. So that guy is right in that example. It's not a great argument point for the Globers if they have their ass ripped through their throats regularly on that point, but it is when you're trying to formulate a modus tollens out of it. It's critical that those sorts of rough edges are polished out. Anyway,
Yeah, but
we're kind of...
I have
hang on,
modus
Nathan.
tollens thing.
Go on, John.
I was just going to say, if Earth is a non-inertial turning reference frame, then it will have a radial value. Earth does not have a radial value. Therefore, it's not a non-inertial turning reference frame.
Perfect segue to begging the question. Okay, so most of these fallacies, when used in debate about a globe, start with the presupposition of a globe being in existence in the first instance. Like, comparatively, me just assuming that we do have unicorns. I mean, in my example, I've got unicorns, and Arwin's example's got unicorns. We're talking about them. We all know what the word means, so we must have unicorns. We're all on the same page here, right? We all start this next stint of discussion with us all understanding and knowing that unicorns do exist. We are all in agreement, are we not?
We are starting a new convention, that's correct.
Yep.
So we all agree unicorns are real. For when I next give an example of if unicorns are real, I'll show an example that proves they're real. Because we're already starting with the assumption that they are, aren't we?
Yep.
That's correct.
So if we are on a sphere, Earth, with a curved surface and a radius of 3959, we're all cool with just starting this next discussion with us being on a sphere in the example, right? If Earth's a sphere, then we'll see Earth curve at the horizon, for example. So we're all cool. We're just going to start assuming we're on a sphere to make the example of being on a sphere. Is that okay? Let's change tact. That's not okay. So it's not okay for me to start an example of unicorns being real by telling you that unicorns are real and getting you to accept that unicorns are real for me to example how the unicorns that are real are moving the stars. Or assuming that Earth is a sphere to then give you an example how if Earth is a sphere, then we'll see Earth curve, sphere, horizon, because we've already assumed we're on a sphere. So this is called begging the question. That's pretty concise. I don't think I can make it any more concise than that. Anybody feel free to open that up, because that's as concise as I can make it.
I just want to say it's essential because you hear that term begging the question everywhere, but it's not begging the question.
Okay, I'll cover that first. So, colloquially, people misuse the term because they don't understand English. So, I'll give you an example. A guy called Vehicle Virgins does car reviews, and he misuses this wording all the time when he's talking about a particular car. So, if they've left out a switch, for example, let's say they've left out a bonnet release catch in favour of screwing the damn thing down. When he points that out to his audience, he'll say, well, that begs the question, how do you get in if you're on the side of the road? That's not begging the question. That raises the question. It doesn't beg the question. Begging the question is the fallacy I just detailed, where you assume your outcome, as opposed to raising a question of how you're going to get into your bonnet if you haven't got a release catch.
Yeah, I heard Owen Schroyer say exactly the same thing yesterday. He likes to say that now too. Oh, it definitely begs the question. No, it doesn't. That's not what that means.
Yeah, raises
Afternoon, guys.
Hey, Adam.
How can you beg the question? I've not even asked a question.
Okay.
I knew you were coming up with that.
Calm down, Jim.
Let's just cover that. So, the question that's being asked is the assumption of the thing you're trying to prove. That should be a question. Is Earth sphere-shaped? Is the question. Well, in not answering the question and making sure that everybody agrees with me before we even discuss this subject of if Earth is a sphere or not, that is the question, I'll make my statement that Earth is a sphere, radius 3959, and because Earth's a sphere, radius 3959, the horizon blocks boats and buildings. So it starts with the very premise that you should be asking a question about, rather than stating as an implicit fact assumed in the first instance. That's why it's called begging the question. Because rather than actually querying whether or not Earth's a sphere, we're just going to assume it. We're going to beg that's true. It's the begging of the question, hence the terminology. We're going to be assuming it rather than asking it. We just beg that question.
Right, so this colloquial use of begging the question is a malformation. What they should be saying, what they're probably implying is it begs to be questioned, not the question.
Yes, that's
right?
that's an equally good phraseology rather than raises the question. Say that again, Alan.
It begs to be questioned would be a better way to say it.
It begs to be questioned. Maybe. It's too close in terminology, but yes, it's equally correct English-wise, I suspect, although I haven't checked. But yeah, that sounds right grammatically. Okay,
right, because they're saying it because they are like about something that is said, like, we need to question that, like, that seems blatantly wrong. So it begs to be questioned. It's not begging the question.
Yeah, it leaves us with a question.
It requires inquiry.
Yeah, it requires inquiry. It leaves us with a question of X, Y, and Z. So, yeah, it's just not the fallacy of begging the question. Either way, the question being begged in this instance is a sphere Earth, and whether or not we have one, assumed in the first instance, to say, if Earth is a sphere, then we're going to see horizon blocking stuff. Well, if Earth's a sphere is your positive assertion that Earth's a sphere that I've got to accept before we move forward in this discussion, aka begging the question. Any more for any more?
I agree. All ballers are beggars.
All examples of a sphere Earth will always start with begging the question without exception.
Right. Begging the question is effectively assuming the outcome within the premise.
Correct.
That's what it is.
Go on, John.
Are we going to go into how they use a false dichotomy with kind of a begging the question, but both of the models they use in the false dichotomy are flat Earth models?
Sure.
We're going to go into that one.
Okay, so dichotomy is... Who wants to explain what a dichotomy is first?
A dichotomy is something either is or isn't.
A two-choice solution.
Also known as a false dilemma.
False
Well, no,
dilemma, yeah.
It's presented that there are only two possible solutions, so it's a false. They could either be incorrect solutions or there could be more than two.
Yeah. So I think, thank you, Adam. What John's driving at is to say that to mask the assumption of the outcome of the thing that's being debated, i.e. Earth being a sphere, you can hide that fallacy under another fallacy. So a second layer, which is offering up two alternatives. One is the assumption of a sphere Earth, the question being begged thereof, and an alternative that you, their opponent, may or may not have actually claimed, which is a second model. So they position you on a pizza pie flying up through a sky vacuum with a boat falling over the edge of a circular disc, and they with their if Earth's a sphere radius 3959. Those are the two positions they'll present. Question you on your adherence to their second position they've foisted upon you, whilst declaring that the outcome of the proposition put to you for a model you haven't necessarily claimed has only one alternative, and if their example is shown to be correct, their alternative is the winner. In this example, the sphere Earth is the winner when offered up in false dichotomy. If Earth a sphere radius 3959 versus if Earth a pizza pie in a sky vacuum with boats falling off a disc.
That's the least important one of all.
The least.
The least important,
The least important
one.
one. Very good.
Well, the reason I bring that one up is because their false dichotomy is of two flat Earth models.
I knew that's where you were going. Can you expand on that, please?
Well, they'll say stellarium. They'll use stellarium as their model, which is a flat Earth model. It's just got the celestial sphere around you, but that's a flat Earth model. And then they'll hold that up against, say, that equidistant projection, azimuthal equidistant projection, and say, well, this one matches observation. The stellarium matches what I see better than yours, therefore mine's true. And then nobody's ever questioned why are they both flat Earth models?
Correct. So they'll hold up the azimuthal equidistant projection, which is North Pole centric, and say this is your flat Earth model. Now, true, if you were standing at the North Pole, that would be your perspective representation of the stars above you, and when translated into stellarium from your actual location, it's essentially doing the same thing, but projecting out the azimuthal equidistant projection with the stars above your location. So both are flat Earth models, but they'll say stellarium's a globe model. Well, this has come from the globe. And they'll say that your flat Earth model that you haven't necessarily claimed, azimuthal equidistant North Pole centric projection, they'll tell you that that's your model. And if you even squeeze a minor win out of that model for whatever reason that you might do so, because you've claimed it, they'll say that it's a globe projection also. They'll tell you that both models have come from a globe. That when you describe the azimuthal equidistant North Pole centric projection, that projection is a projection of a globe. That's what they'll tell you. Now, in reality,
that would be
both are used for navigation with elevation angle measurements off a flat plane. Both require a flat plane to function. Both are flat Earth models, but they're being held up in false dichotomy, which is John's point, with just a mere claim by Fiat that it's a globe model when it isn't.
Right. When globers say that's based off the globe model, that's projection, because that's actually what they base their globe model off. They just don't want to realize it.
Right.
It's a Phil B trick. Phil B does it all the time.
But before
right, they project the ground up onto the celestial sphere is how they make the globe. They just, but the celestial sphere model is a flat Earth model.
I'll tell you right now, most normies are not ready to hear that their globe came from flat Earth elevation angles.
I've never
They're
heard
not
it.
ready for that.
I
I've said
was-
it to a couple of them, and they look at me like I have 3 heads.
I wasn't ready for the way that John just phrased that. So up until now, I've described what John's just said, and I'll repeat it in a second, as them taking the ground that you're taking an angle from and saying that you're stood upon the arc of the tool, and therefore you're moving around the rotational basis, the circumference of that tool. When you see the star drop towards the horizon, it's you moving around the tool, therefore taking the flat plane that you've got the angle from, making it the spherical surface of the protractor or the sextant. Okay, that's my rather long-winded way of describing what John's just described as taking the flat plane that you're standing on and projecting it up to the sky. Wow, that was much more concise. And visually, I can picture that far easier than what I described as laying the world up on top of a protractor. That's rubbish. What you've just described, the projection of the flat plane, so let's describe it as a azimuthal equidistant projection from your location in America, and then projecting the ground that you've stood and can get angles from flat up onto the ceiling in a curved way. Well, that's what the globe is, isn't it? That was brilliant. I'm slightly taken aback by that, John. That was excellent. Nothing to
It's
do with
like
fallacies. Brilliant all the same.
I thought that my projection conclusion was also pretty dead on. They tell them, oh, that's our model. No, that's what you based your model off. That doesn't mean that it started off like that. It's the other way around. You're projecting, Globy.
Right.
Yeah,
Let's
you're
not get
great,
confused. Let's
Joel.
not. You just got to discern what that meant. When Darwin says projection, he means psychologically putting on your opponent what you are actually guilty of. Sort of Hillary Clinton
Right,
style.
psychological projection, not the actual map projection. That would
that's
make
why
it
it needs
very
clarity.
confusing.
Because we're talking about projecting the surface of ground up onto a dome, and then you're talking about globers psychologically projecting their ill will onto you. And what they're doing in this instance, they're projecting the fact that they take a flat plane and project it up onto the sky in the curve of your perspective view and call that the sphere surface, the globe Earth. And you're saying when they do that, they project psychologically, they're using a flat plane on a curved sky and tell you that you've taken your flat map from a curved surface. So they project the very thing they've done, which is hijack the flat plane and call it a curve, and tell you you've done it. That's what Arwin means by projection, and he's right.
They're psychologically projecting their map projecting scenario onto the flat earthers.
Yes.
Nathan, I put a slide in Master B. We covered this a week or two ago. And John, you can jump in and comment on this if this is what you're saying.
Yeah, it's a quite complex way of showing it, but yes.
So here you've got the equatorial plane, and you get your angle from a flat baseline. Then it's projected up to the celestial sphere, and then from there it's re-projected back to the supposed sphere of the Earth, as you can see there.
Right. So you've got the elevation angle measurement from your position at the centre of this circle, which is a flat baseline. The only way to get these angles up to these stars. And that's how it's depicted in the first instance. That's the origins of all of these models. They're all taken from a flat plane. Your globe's a flat Earth. In case you hadn't picked up on that and you're a sphere believer watching right now. I think a lot of them are probably tuned out just through twitching. Anyway, so what Tenth's describing is how it's then projected up into the curve of the tool. So what you've got here going over the top of this flat plane is essentially the arc of the projector that you're measuring the angle with. So if you take this star on the left, that's the angle. There's the flat baseline. There's you. That's your measurement of an angle, right? Well, the tool that you'd measure those angles through could be described as this dome shape over the top of you. You could put the degrees over the top of it, right? From 0 to 180. So this would be your tool. But then you project up the ground onto what was just an arc of the tool that you were measuring, giving you a perspective view of the stars over here, right? And then you say, that's the ground. And now we've got these new angles that don't work anymore off a curved surface that can't give you an angle. But that's the switcheroo. And where Arwin's saying, when they tell you that an azimuthal equidistant projection is actually a globe projection, it's like, no, bloody isn't. your globe was projected up from this flat surface. It's the only way you got angles to the stars. You couldn't do it off a curve. It doesn't give you an angle. But the tool and its curve has become your surface.
Yeah, can you go to the next slide?
Yep.
Okay, astronomical triangle, combining the celestial sphere concept and the horizon system of coordinates. We derive a triangle on the surface of the celestial sphere known as the astronomical triangle. This triangle projected back to the Earth's surface is the navigational triangle. In practice, the terms astronomical and navigational as applied to triangles are synonymous. So basically, the picture is being described here. They take an angle off a flat horizontal coordinate system because it's flat, and then they project it to a celestial sphere, and then from there throw it back and create a fake sphere for the Earth.
It's like, sorry, it's like everybody's heard the terminology as above, so below, and they've hijacked that terminology because that's exactly what they've done. They've took the perspective angle of a dome above us, and brought it below and turned that into a globe Earth. So they've hijacked the terminology as above, so below.
Right. What do you think
not quite.
Symbol for masonry is? It's the square and the compass.
Yep.
They've hijacked the fact that we see a dome.
We see in a dome perspective, we have an arc, which let's just bring it back up on screen. Adam's absolutely correct. This dome represents your field of view, which is measurable with the arc of the tool. So that's not a dome over your head. That's the tool measurement. So you could put the end, like I said, 180, 0. That's what we're talking about when he says dome. We know what you mean, one deck, and Adam's just clarifying he's not having a dig. But carry on, Adam, sorry.
Okay.
No, that was it. It was just to say, just to recognize. It's important to recognize that even though that's how we're seeing it, or imagining it. Remember, yeah, we're creating that dome in our mind, in our vision. Yeah, it's not there. It's just that same drone at a different distance, so it looks like it's doming. But we just got to remember that the angle means distance.
Next slide, please. Adam, comment on this next slide because this is how the eye works.
Oh, where did you get this? This is great.
I showed it last 2 weeks ago.
I don't remember seeing this.
Go on, Adam. I think you're more knowledgeable on this, but this is the way we see.
I've got nothing on screen.
Master B.
While the audience can see it, this is the dome that we've just described. So when I said you could draw the digits of the degrees, 90, 180, 0, well, this is exactly the same, but on a much smaller scale than I'd ever tried to describe it visually, but just as good. That's this. Not a dome over your heaven. That's what it is. It's just the arc of your vision from horizon to horizon. Doesn't mean there's a dome over you, and it's why the azimuthal equidistant projection is projected from wherever location you're at when you make these measurements. It's only relevant to your specific position. I mean, it's a feat of feat of genius how the azimuthal equidistant projection actually functions. Amazing. Anyway, this eye shows exactly that. There's your protractor, your compass, or whatever you want to call it. Effectively, the sextant in your eye.
I think the word you were looking for is cartography. It's an amazing feat of cartography.
That's the one I was looking for. It's an amazing feat of cartography. Map making.
When we're looking at the eye there, I just want to distinguish that when we talk about angles being distance, that is only in relation to celestial navigation. If we're dealing with terrestrial objects, other things come into play. But when we are dealing with celestial navigation, then an angle is a distance.
Well, I think it's interesting that we take the measurements off a flat plane. We then model it as a flat plane. And then you take each of the zenith points or GP positions from the ground and apply it to that model of a flat plane, but in the sky instead of on the ground. And you got yourself a globe.
Amazing. Isn't it amazing? I never ever anticipated getting to this stage in Flat Earth where I believe I've now got a comprehensive understanding of how the Earth was measured, how it was then turned into a sphere, and how that was then perpetrated upon the Western world. I can talk about it from start to finish with examples of how it's done and examples of how it's still in current use as a flat plane in modern day life. Earth is flat. There was one last fallacy that didn't quite get covered with one of the examples that John from Refracted Curvature brought up, which is the stereotyping fallacy. So the stereotyping fallacy is where an assumption is made based on your group affiliation. So in this instance, as a flat earther, in quotes, it would be automatically assumed in the example given earlier with a false dichotomy that you do obviously automatically believe in pizza pie Earth flying up through a sky vacuum at 9.8 meters per second, with a boat falling off the edge and water falling off the edge. You think that, don't you, flat earther? Well, that's because that's a stereotyping fallacy, i.e. the automatic assumption that you abide by whatever that is claimed to be the viewpoints of the group. Now, there's a rude awakening to stereotyping fallacies if you come here and debate us as a globe earther, and if you're a regular watcher of the show, you'll know that's the case. Well, where's the dome? Sorry, what dome? The dome over a flat earth. Do you claim there's a dome over a flat earth? No, you do. Do I? When did I claim that? Etc, etc. So stereotyping fallacy is the door that needs to be opened, or kicked opened for us, to get you into the false dichotomy of having two models, one that you definitely believe in as a flat earther and their model that is only being offered up in false dichotomy to mask the begging the question fallacy. Now there's all sorts of complex layers that fallacies can be presented in, and just diluting them down to this simplistic form with affirming the consequent, it isn't really applicable in real world scenarios. And I'll tell you why. Because while we've touched on this masking of a begging the question fallacy with a false dichotomy, yeah, which had to be employing a stereotyping fallacy in order for it to take place, the person that's doing this, number one, they don't necessarily know that they're committing multiple levels of fallacy, but they will. And they don't necessarily believe you when you pull apart their logical fallacy with reasoning. They'll normally just talk through you, so it's more difficult than just explaining to somebody how their reasoning is flawed when it's layered up so much, and half the time the fallacy hasn't been given its full form. So you've got to know the fallacy, you've got to know how it would be formed if it was to be formed, but they haven't. They've only given you half of it and kind of made you give the other half to make the conclusion for them. All of these different layers isn't something that we're going to expect any member of the audience to just immediately pick up on. But I do feel we've had a success in terms of really breaking down affirming the consequent today, and the various aspects of other fallacies that go along with it, i.e. stereotyping, begging the question, false dichotomy, and I don't think that was it. I think that was it. Was that? And the actual logic of modus tollens once you rip apart a claim that's proved to be incorrect, even though it's made with logic that's flawed. Any other summaries?
Listening. They're not listening in chat. They're losing their mind.
Everything that the Globers do, is a proto-fallacy, because they've introduced the globe after they've taken the flat Earth angle measurements, after they've used the flat Earth model to project those up onto the sky. Then they introduce the proto-fallacy, where it must be a sphere, even though nothing has given you the idea that it is a sphere from those things. That's when they interject that, and that's what corrupts their logic from then on out.
Yeah, and if anybody was to postulate that there's a shill amongst us because this very fallacy was heavily promoted by a character known as Proto-Thad, he literally was the sort of main person to come here at the very least to push that fallacy. So if someone was to say, that's no coincidence, I'd go, yeah, you're probably right. Shill.
Well, A fad is, in the Urban Dictionary, is a musical creature that leads one astray.
So a guy employing the proto fallacy and leading people astray was called proto-fad. Just like rumpus being called the rumpus. A disturbance. That's what a rumpus is. Yeah. Like I say, total conspiratard way to end a very good show on fallacy. I didn't mean it. You don't have to take that too seriously. But it is just a funny coincidence that the proto fallacy was employed by proto-fad, the screen name. Yes, we all agree. Amazing coincidence.
You may have to go over necessary antecedent with what I'm reading in YouTube chat. Oh my God, these people are lost.
Concerned yourself with the YouTube chat, have you? That's below
I
peanut
just jumped
gallery.
in for a second.
Nathan, you're
Talking about
just
barometers and put your hand in front of a fan. I told them go back to 2014. This is too advanced. See you later.
Nathan, you're just hung up on the angle still, aren't huh?
You're just getting hung up on that flat Earth elevation angle we need to employ this proto fallacy of using the opponent's point to then move on to the assertion that we are using a sphere when we've already used a flat Earth and proved it. Yeah, maybe I just need to stop getting hung up on that angle.
By the way, let me just say something real quick. Yesterday, I'm doing a job, and this guy built a big, table. It's more like a stage, so you could work on carpet. And he had these little holes going throughout it, like an air hockey table. So you flick the switch, and it throws air up, and you're able to move the carpet around. So he said to me, there's a science behind this. And I said, well, it's not science, maybe technology. And he agreed. So I think most people agree that when they say science, they don't mean science. They've just been so indoctrinated by the word that they'll just say science when they mean technology.
Well, I was going to moan that was a terrible way to end the show, but it wasn't actually bad. You rounded it out okay, Neil. But yeah, with that, I'll say if you are watching this on either Nathan Oakley 1980 or Nathan Oakley premiering streams, then stay tuned as there will be an after show to follow. Unfortunately, though, if you are watching this live, this is where we bid you farewell. So a huge, massive, enormous thank you to all of you smashed the super chat, liked, commented, shared, subscribed, hit the thanks button, the PayPal link, and all that good stuff. Once again, stay tuned if you're watching on either premiering stream. I've been Nathan Oakley. Another massive thank you to today's Discord and G+ panels, and I'll see you all in the next video.
What a lovely day!
Glad you pulled that around at the end, Neil. I thought that was going to end really badly, with a bad rounding out point for the end of the show. So I went on camera to show my disdain without verbally having to tell you. But then you rounded it out really well with the science example and technology. I was really pleased.
I didn't know the show was ending. I wouldn't have brought it up.
It's good enough. That was good enough to end on. It wasn't quite a cliffhanger, but it was still a good point.
Neil is ace.
Neil is ace.
Agreed.
Carpetbagger.
Carpet layer.
That's what I was thinking. Oh, God. A carpet example to end the show on.
He doesn't bag them. He unbags
I do not
them
lay
and
or
sticks
bag
them on the ground.
carpets.
He unbags them.
Sorry, did we refer to you incorrectly? Did we use the wrong pronoun, Neil?
No, I was going to be vulgar, but I'm a Christian. I'm going to refrain.
Thank you, Cuddles. Excellent idea to cover a fallacy in depth. I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, it's a good show. That I really enjoyed it. Nice one. Not that all the other shows aren't, but I did actually enjoy that one a little bit more. Thanks.
I
Guys,
enjoy the
I
interplay
wanted to.
between the fallacies.
Just
Can
for
I bring up?
Arwen's sake, Carpetbagger, a northerner in the South after the American Civil War, usually seeking private gain under the Reconstruction government.
Bloody carpetbagger,
that's me.
Neil.
But
I'll tell you what, though, this table the guy built, it really is amazing how he did it. But it's
Did
not
you guys play air hockey after you were done?
Can I bring up a bit of a research subject, if you guys want to? About gyro compasses. Somebody brought it up today. And I looked into the Wikipedia, and it's like so wrong. Like the entire thing. So I was really puzzled about this specific device and what it actually does. Because a gyro compass allegedly adapts to, I'm getting feedback, natural north without magnetism. And the way it suggests to do that, according to Wikipedia, is by adapting to the spin of the axis of the Earth. It's like the worst story ever. So I wanted to kind of like dig into this. Like, what is this? What does it actually do? And how can a thing without, well, basically keeping track of the skies or using magnetism adapt to true north if the north is a point within Euclidean space and not a universal direction? So, anybody have any comments on that?
I wouldn't believe a word they say about how they reckon it works. Rob Durham bought one. Got videos if you check his channel of it. It's setting it up at calibrating. I don't know. As far as I can see, it's a bearing generator. So you're on board ship, and you're going to set a bearing. Now, what you want to do is stay on that bearing. If you're going to use just a compass, when you've moved a bit, everything needs to be realigned, doesn't it? Yeah. But if you're actually on a bearing that's defined by the gyro compass, which was initially set from the north, then you can follow that gyro bearing simpler than recalibrating your positions based on magnetism.
Yeah, but it says that it's not using magnetism. That's the odd thing.
Didn't say that. I said you define your bearing with it, yeah, and it's going to use the gyro to maintain that bearing. But your bearing's still going to be based off of a north, south, east, west reading or 360 degrees. But once you've set that bearing, then the gyro will hold that bearing for you to keep referring to that as opposed to having to re-refer to any magnetic.
Right. So it keeps you in a rigid, or it indicates a Euclidean direction because of the gyro rigidity, right? That makes sense. But if the north, what the thing was pointing at would be a point in Euclidean space, right? The North Pole, say. How can it then keep pointing at that north if it's moving in a circle over Euclidean space, you see? There's a geometric dilemma there.
Well, what if it's used for dead reckoning, right? Just to maintain your course, but then the recalibration happens when you arrive so that you can say that it was actually adjusting for the curve of the Earth.
Yeah, but it's not doing that, right? It's not a device you would allegedly have to adjust after you reach the destination. It just tells you exactly where the true north is once it's started up without using magnetism or observation. That reveals a mystery as to what this true north really is within Euclidean space. And actually suggests a little that a rectangular projection might be more correct.
It has to be recalibrated. It has to be recalibrated each time.
It's not.
But they say it doesn't, though.
No, but it's not real. The point it's maintaining is defined by the gyro. So it's not a real thing. That it's not like it's referring back to a magnetic source. It's referring back to the point of calibration.
It's not saying you have to correct it. Once you spin it up, it sets the true north, and then it's set. You don't have to recalibrate.
Once you reach your destination, you have to recalibrate it to north.
Can you give me a
Magnetic north.
citation on the Wikipedia or anything anywhere else?
Go to Rob's video. As I said, it will show you. It's a real sod. The setting up of it takes like 3 or 4 hours for it to calibrate itself. It's really slow, tedious thing. I'm sure you have to. Ages since I've looked into it, but said there's that old stuff from Rob Durham, but I'm pretty sure John's right. When you set off on a new journey, you've got to re-initialize it for that journey, because it's about. I'm sure it's just about defining a bearing, dead reckoning, as John's calling it. So you're just staying on a line. That is a line. So if you think about trying to follow a line with magnetics, you curve, don't you? You're constantly having to twist. But this just allows you at sea to maintain that bearing on that device, as opposed to having to recalculate the bearing.
Okay. Well,
but in their mind,
hold on. In that case, the description of the gyro compass on Wikipedia is just completely wrong.
Yeah,
because
any mention
in their
of
mind,
needing to recalibrate. That's the point of it.
Because in their mind, they live on a sphere, right? And dead reckoning, when they dead reckon, the compass moves, right? But everything in that article is through the lens that they live on a sphere, and it's a justification for that.
Yeah, but then even on a sphere, it doesn't make any sense. Because on a sphere, north is not an absolute direction. In a Euclidean sense, you're moving over a ball. It's not going to be a singular uniform direction. So even on a globe, it makes even less sense. This whole article on Wikipedia just really baffles me.
Yeah, I agree with you. Lining up the coordinate systems is even more nonsensical if you're going to have a spherical surface. It's bad enough if you're just dealing with a 2D plane of projection, combining the two. But yeah, in a 3D sense, how those systems overlap, I don't know. I agree, Owen.
Well, I think it's for anybody that's willing to dig in, like, take a look, because it's really weird. Like, this is like on the weird level, like Globiolus description, right? And it's worth looking into, I think, to unravel it. Anybody cares to dig in? I posted it in Mastery.
Thank you.
Just saying, an instruction manual might be a good place to look as well. Maybe like an instruction setup with guide manual of the actual piece of equipment, maybe.
Well, I'd like to see someone using the gyro compass with a regular compass next to it and see if they maintain the same direction. Because they're not going to.
Gyro compass is set up. Gyro compass is first set up with a magnetic compass.
Okay, but then afterward, there is no magnetic device in the gyro compass itself. So yeah, originally you might use a magnet, right?
They don't need it. They set it to true north using magnetic declination and just let it go. Now, if it's a really long trip, you're going to have to check that thing and then make corrections because your magnetic declination is going to change. If it's short trips, not a big deal. But longer trips, yeah. But the important point, it's set up based off of a magnetic compass. You're not setting up a gyro compass. You're not firing a gyro compass up. It's magically going to point to true north.
Well, in the article, it kind of does suggest that. So
yeah, well, they're idiots.
That's correct. That
what
is the
article
bullshit.
are you reading? One from Crackheads or Us?
Yeah, it is, because they when they're on about doing it underground, they use this same gyro compass to line up for digging tunnels and stuff, and they do pretend that it calibrates itself based on the spin and against the rotational
No, it's
Coriolis force.
not.
It's hilarious, yeah.
Yeah, demonstrate that. I want to
Yeah,
see a demonstration of that. That's where it'll die. Fucking clowns.
Right. So
John is
well,
definitely right.
in that case, it's going to require our attention because I think that globers are constantly getting distracted by this thing, just like Globiolis. Well, we've needed to like really master what Globiolis even is and how it's wrong in order to keep countering this. I think that we're going to have to look into this one as well because it's going to come back. I guarantee
Happy
it.
days. I already looked into it. It's already over. I already did a couple shows on this, by the way.
You did? When?
Yep.
When was that?
You want the date, the time?
Well, if you could
There's a
post
numpty
it.
clip. I'll send a numpty clip with it on.
Right. Perfect.
Hold on.
Arwen, I'll also post in the war room for you Rob Durham's FE Core Gyro Compass stuff, because like I said, they bought this piece of kit and spent a long time with the manual on deck. I was privy to bits with Rob and that, so I'll post it there. Have a watch. I'll stick it in Master B, Arwen, underneath your bit.
Okay, cool. I'll check it out.
And it's Rob Durham's one. There you go, mate.
Where you want this one?
Just put it in Master B too. Why not?
All right. I'll put it in Discord too, just in case.
Thank you.
Interesting, though. I really think this is like when it dead reckoning and heading. I think heading might be where they're trying to confuse everyone.
There you go.
Thank you.
I think this first came up. I think Bob, the pseudoscience fallacy guy, brought this up right around the time because we dealt with it at the end of a long presentation, and it was, called the Brain Trust Baltards. It had everyone. It had Professor Dave, Rumpus, an English guy, can't remember his name. He's a numpty dipshit. McToon was on there. Remember that? The Brain Tard Globe or Brain, something like that. I can't remember.
Yeah, I remember.
Yeah, so this was a while ago.
Just check with Discord. Have I put that in the right room for you, Discord, the Rob Durham one as well?
It's probably in a time where I wasn't paying too much attention to this. Right, because it took a long time to even tell all the different gyroscopes apart to me. So, but at this point, I'm ready to like really distinguish the details. So somebody brought it up and I thought that this is worth investigating.
So it's around, I made that presentation. It was March 28th, 2020. So right around the end of 2019. That's when I don't know if it came up before. It doesn't matter anyway. I crushed it. It's at the end of the presentation. It's a long one because there were so many people there.
All right. I'll check that out too. Thank you.
Yep. I guess I could post it.
It's pretty astonishing how many deep machinations are out there, right? Not just like little tricksy other ways of describing what's used and then just invoke things like gravity or something, but to really like completely create something that's just absolutely nonsensical. Like there's more of these things out there. It's not just Globiolus and the Foucault pendulum, right? This thing too. And this is an alleged industrially used device. It's pretty serious.
Yeah, so I was saying that myself last week, like when I was talking about the Coriolis and looking into that. It's amazing how many other sources give you that much bullshit as well and lies. So you just don't actually know where to turn and what to listen to or what, except for your fucking common sense.
The trick is just to figure out what about it is real and which ones contradict like the foundational concepts, right? If you figure out, oh look, this doesn't make any logical sense with what it's supposed to be doing, that part is a machination. That is nonsense, probably to appease the globe believers. And with Coriolis effect, that's the vast majority of what you get to learn about it. Because Coriolis is really very simply explained with just a couple of sentences.
Well, the more confusing they try to make it, the more damning it is for the globe, usually.
Indeed. Because that means if they sought to inject a really high level of nonsense, then that is an indicator that it is really an egregious error that is there in plain sight that needs covering up to that degree. Would you not agree?
Yeah, I would, yeah. They just smother it with a load of absolute nonsense and numbers and maths. And most people will just say, oh, can't understand all that, and fucking that's it.
Who does it with maths? Who jumbles it up?
The heliocentric model.
The heliocentric model doesn't have intent. I never saw the heliocentric model present anything with mathematics.
It's the heliocentric believers.
Which one?
What do you mean, which one?
Who provides the maths for the heliocentric model? I haven't seen it in 7 years.
What? No, but what? What do you mean the maths?
That's what I mean.
What do you mean? You mean that's the maths?
What do you mean by what I mean?
Could you not say all the bullshit of the 3959 and the distance to the sun? That's all mathematical bullshit.
Yeah, but it's all wrong mathematical.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's all incorrect, yeah.
So any mathematics they've provided up to this point, all of it's been wrong. Or they've been putting on airs like just saying it's math, but not showing or demonstrating, right?
Yep.
Like a famous one is Einstein or Newton's equations are in Einstein's field equations. Really? Show. We've been asking that for what, 4 or 5 years now? No, not a single one has shown. Why?
It sounds good when
just
you say
because it doesn't fit in there doesn't mean that it has to be in there, right? They want it to be in there, so it has to be in there. Just stop looking because it just has to be
I
there.
suppose.
Hold on, I know this one. Just because you can't mathematically transform Einstein into Newton doesn't mean you can't transform mathematically Einstein into Newton.
What? How?
I agree,
He
John.
just said the same thing. He just contradicted himself.
A change can't to it hasn't. Just because you can't change one into the other doesn't mean it hasn't been. That kind of makes a bit more nonsense.
Oh man, I didn't even pick up on that. That's clever.
Well, Rumpus did it a little less eloquently when he was like, what was he talking about? He was talking about this same problem. He's saying you can do it, you can't do it. You can't do it numerically. you can do it numerically.
You
We
can
don't
do
have
it
a geometric
numerically. Yeah, I
horizon.
got that one recorded.
We don't have a
Okay, so
geometric
it's
horizon. We
just
do. We do.
just because we can't doesn't mean we won't. That's basically it.
But yeah, how do you have mathematics for a model that doesn't exist? That doesn't make sense
Well,
either.
a fallacy is better than nothing.
That's like when Nathan describes like the unicorn anatomy and how you measure it. Like, oh, okay, well, you're measuring the anatomy of a unicorn. Seriously?
Yeah, at least they have a made-up just so story. What do you have, Flat Earther?
Yeah, fallacy is better than nothing.
Did you guys see the presentation yesterday where Andrew Thomas Young snatched his own wig off in less than 2 sentences?
I'm sorry, I didn't catch it.
You need to watch that.
It was a good show yesterday,
Because
John. I enjoyed yesterday. So right giggle.
Yeah.
Went,
you need to watch towards the end
Nathan,
after
if you didn't see it.
Say again?
Say we went a bit impromptu. Well, you did, didn't you? We started taking the mick out of daft things that ballers say, and then John pulled out all 60 of them. So 5B.
In that case,
5B.
I did catch that from about number 20 odd. I tuned back in and did catch the end of that.
Then pretty much right after that, I went into the slide that you guys showed on the show. That's a bit redundant. Nah, I guess it hasn't. You pulled it up on the show yesterday from Andrew Thomas Young, and you guys were commenting on it. But everyone missed the 3 elephants in the room.
Now we will draw the line of sight to the apparent horizon OG.
No. Yeah, that was after he put the slide up. Let me see if I can snatch it, and I'll state it. It's in Master B somewhere, right? That's where I got it. I've run across that a number of times. It just stood out to me. Here you go. Calculating atmospheric refraction. All the discussion above deals with plane surfaces, but the Earth isn't flat. To deal with refraction in a ding, 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 ding curved atmosphere, we have to introduce some geometrical considerations which have been put on a separate page. Second sentence. Likewise, the atmosphere doesn't contain separate layers of different refractive index.
Uh-oh.
Dude, why did he do that?
Even if I give him the fairy tale curved atmosphere, relax. Even if I give him the fairy tale curved atmosphere, right? I can just give him that. Listen to this again. Likewise, the atmosphere doesn't contain separate layers of different refractive index. Well, then you don't have refraction. That's what it is. And then he goes on with ray bending, and I took rays to the woodshed because he said in another document that rays don't exist. So there you go.
Why did he do that? He didn't need to say that, right? What, you think you're smart for bringing that up?
Look, while we get annoyed with it, Arwin, that provides ample pain relief for anti-flat earthers sometimes. So, don't knock it till you've tried it.
Can you post that again, Nathan, or do you want me to
post? If you're going to make a globe machination, then don't immediately destroy it yourself, right? Like, why did you have to say that?
I put it in Master B, Nathan, so
Thank you very
pop
much.
it up again.
Yeah, I've popped it up. Thank you very much.
Owen, it's the truth. They can't lie. They go on to tell you how the light's going to bend, but he has to tell the truth in there, and he has to make it quite clear that there's no refractive indexes through a graduated atmosphere.
Do you know what it actually is? It's called plausible deniability. If somebody came and criticised him and said,
No, it's...
Go on.
It's the perfect defense.
At least
because
keep
if
an
you've
open
already
option.
If you've already
Damn,
debunked your
Nathan's getting
position,
rumpus.
God, this is unlistenable. How did it go from such a great show to Arwen destroying it? Just let them finish their statements.
Them, two people at the same time talking? Okay.
You and QE.
Yes, I said they were rumpusing you, Nathan. They got all hot and bothered. Hey, why don't you put the other one? Go to Ambassador B and put the other one up. It's my edition.
With the
Same
highlights.
slide, but I made little marks on it.
I got it.
Appreciate it. Go ahead.
I was just going to say it's the perfect way when you're asserting a nonsensical position to go ahead and destroy it. So if anyone else comes along trying to debunk it, you can already say that you've dealt with that.
That's what I meant by plausible deniability, actually. That's exactly what I meant. Well,
Exactly.
I've already covered the fact that the atmospheric index isn't going to be changing through sphere-shaped air. I'll write it right here. What kind of idiot are you?
Right, refraction at 7/6R.
You just don't understand. He could have hit it better.
What are you moaning about?
I want my globe fantasy. I know it's fake, but if you're gonna like help people out with ideas of how you can continuate the globe belief against all better judgment, then don't just immediately slap it out of their hands again.
It's not.
Like,
it's not. People who come and read that on the... Let's not say it like that. People who come and read that from the anti-flat earth side are only looking for selective information to relieve their cognitive pain. So they're not going to read that and go, oh, hang on a second. Doesn't that completely contradict the thing? They're not going to do that. When it comes to us pointing it out, we've just given
I do that.
Thanks. We've just given the example of plausible deniability being the reason. In other words, we point out the contradiction and the guy says, yeah, that's why I wrote it. Whereas the guy who comes along that doesn't want to see the contradiction, he just won't. He's not going to be outraged like you're describing. How many Globers do you think have come across this? And rather than pick it up and actually present it, saying, look, the horizon's refracted, do you think any of them went, oh, but there is a minor issue with a complete glaring contradiction in it? Of course they didn't.
I bet they didn't even get past the first sentence, Nathan. Because why? If you're an anti-flat earth, you won't go past the first sentence. Look, all the discussion about details with plane surfaces. And you think, oh, and then and suddenly here's the soothing band-aid for the baller. But the Earth isn't flat. To deal with refraction in a curved atmosphere, we have to introduce some geometric considerations. Now they've heard that somebody clever's dealt with all this. It's all been dealt with. It's fine. No, they'll be done there. Even if they read the next sentence, the significance won't go in because they've got their band-aid. They've got what they came for.
Exactly.
Clever man's already made considerations for it.
Exactly. He's already taken that. They've taken geometric consideration. That's what they'll go away with, Arwen. Not what do you mean? There's no refractive index to bend the light as it transitions through sphere-shaped air. What do you mean? That you'd need to do that. That's what refraction is. They're not going to do that.
I know you guys are right. It's just that I had hoped that there would be like a better standard for ball believers, but it seems it's just not meant to be.
This is the height of doublespeak. To do this in the way he's done it, and it tells me that Andrew Thomas Young is a very established doublespeaker. He's very good at it.
I was still expecting more, but maybe I'll
sad for him, Arwen. Is he depressed for them?
Yes. No, but you just don't get it. You don't have a ball win.
You want the attainable standard of them giving you something that's tangible and real and provable, and they're never going to reach that standard. The lofty heights of heliocentrism are the lofty heights of bullshitting. I mean, that if you want to feel sorry for somebody, feel sorry for the person that doesn't realise that and scrambles their way to the top of this food chain, only to realise that the food chain was built on shite.
I do that. But still, it's like we could do more. I'm addressing entirety of humanity. We could be better than ballers. Could be better than this. I know it sounds ridiculous at this point, but they could.
It reminds me of a Fraser Crane episode, right, where they get they nod that they can go to this exclusive spa, and they go to the exclusive spa, and they get their gold card to get the entrance. And they see someone going into a different door, and they're like, where does that door go? Oh, that's the Platinum Lounge. And they get all uppity and stroppy because they want to be going up to the better standard, so they wangle their way up to the higher standard. of the next room up in the next door. And while they're in there, lo and behold, someone comes along with an escort, moving them into a different room. And they're like, where's that room go? Oh, well, that's for the black card only holders. They're like, black card? What, above platinum? Yeah, above platinum. They're like, well, we want to be members of that. So then they inevitably find a way of going up to the platinum level. And then while they're in there, they see a member of staff going out through yet another door. And they're like, well, where the hell's he going? Is there yet another level? So they're all, they're getting the pampering of a higher standard each time they go up. But when they go through that door, they realise that it leads onto the street. That there is nothing above that. It's just a crappy building in a crappy area with trash outside. Well, that's kind of the same with heliocentrism. You think that you're going up to the lofty aspirations of your fantasy of a sky vacuum and the infinite and expanding universe and the world that is conjured upon. And when you work your way up, and someone like Neil deGrasse Tyson, for example, we can postulate the idea that he's worked his way up and eventually he's got to a stage where he's realised that he's opened up the door at the top of the level, thinking there's going to be this amazing space opening up before him, which he might get to explore before he dies. And he realises that all he's done is he's climbed a ladder that's, got a trash-ridden street below it. Much more mundane and normal than he thought when he opened that last door. And then the door shuts behind you and you're trapped outside with no pants on.
Okay, fair enough. That's really hilarious, by the way. It is kind of like that. It's just that I can't get rid of that sensation, what it was like to actually be a baller and just hope that, come on, humans are better than this.
Yeah, I totally get it. I had the same exact fantasies as everyone almost on this panel. We wanted to go to space, because it's amazing. No one's going to deny that idea, the conceptual idea of space is amazing. As a fantasy world, it's amazing. The fact that we had that as part of our perceived reality for a time, I'm not sad about that at all. Now, I'm sad when people after the fact tell me that it's my reality, and I'm like, no, I'm afraid not. I've lost that. It's never going to come back. That you can't vomit up that pill. It's just the way it is. But don't preach about how it is bloody real just because you're still under the illusion. It isn't.
Oh, I am
that compassion that Arwen was showing before. Yeah, I don't have none of that. You can keep all of that compassion for this failed crap. I don't need it.
But it's because of the people that we have to deal with when we believe it, right? I mean, the people that are holding it up, they're trash. And they are trashing you as a believer, in a way. They're just acting like you're stupid and making fun of you. But you don't know it because you're just trapped in the dream. That's the sad part about it, right? I mean, that was the reason why I even stepped away. It's just like, this place is untenable. Everybody's insane. How can anybody know anything about what they even believe in when they're all this deranged?
And with that, I'm going to say another huge, massive, enormous thank you to both Discord and G+ panels for making today's after show possible. And of course, a massive thank you to all of you in either Nathan Oakley 1980 or Nathan Oakley Primary streams for hopefully smashing the super chat, liking, commenting, sharing, subscribing, joining as a member, hitting the thanks button, and all that good stuff. I've been Nathan Oakley, and I will see you all in the next video.